This is crazy. This is unreal. Bongino quits? Question mark, exclamation point, according to the thumbnail here on Benny Johnson's YouTube video. Yikes, Bongino walks out of FBI after furious clash with Pam Bondi over Epstein evidence. And notice, guys, the punctuation here where it's not a statement of saying Bongino quits. It's an exclamated question of shock and awe. Jesus, man, if only some of you guys could really get a grip. The deal is off. Trump just dropped the hammer. Is that in reference to Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi?
Reporting that metadata from the raw Jeffrey Epstein prison video was in fact modified. The missing minute explanation off Deputy AG Todd Blanche weighing in Friday morning on X, saying that he worked closely with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino on the joint FBI and DOJ memo regarding the Epstein files. That's the 2-page memo that got leaked to Axios about this, saying we are not releasing anything else on Epstein. Writing, we all signed off on the contents of the memo, we all agreed, and the conclusion state.
And folks, save yourselves while you can. Save some money while you're at it. David says he used Chapter, got the number from my description. And I've got so many comments here about the placement of the banner here that shows Chapter and their phone number. Pink Quartz 99 says, I called Chapter, very helpful and thorough. Medicare can be a nightmare to navigate, and the rep is excellent. I recommend them. Thank you. Well, thank you, Pink Quartz. I appreciate that. Thank you for leaving that comment and encouraging so many other folks to pick up the phone and dial that number you see on your screen, 270-467-2426, and find out if you can save some money on Medicare. Ann Bass says, just wanted to let you know I called Chapter today and was so very satisfied with the help I received. I'll be turning 65 in January and I'm good to go. Thank you, Kevin, for the advice. Oh, my pleasure. You're very welcome. And thank you for sharing, Ann. Thank you. And thank you for calling and getting the excellent care and help that you deserve. Pick up the phone, folks. The number's on your screen. Don't wait. Don't waste time. Do it now before it's too late. Call Chapter 270-467-2426 and find out what savings is waiting for you on the other end of this fast, free, and easy, simple phone call. No pressure, no incentives for Chapter's representatives to hike up and boost their commission. No, folks, they are honest, trustworthy folks who are solely there for the purpose of helping you save as much as humanly possible while getting the greatest level of care. After the founders and CEO and Chapter's team saw that their own parents were being taken advantage of in a system that is essentially designed for confusion. There's over 24,000 Medicare plans to choose from. And come on, guys, let me know who has the time to even go through them all and let alone cross-reference to see which one's going to be the best one for them and their personal healthcare needs and their budget. And that's why Chapter is such an amazing partner. And I'm glad we have the opportunity to share them with you, and why I'm so happy that so many of you have already called and realized that and found your savings and have come back and left these comments for others to do the same. Again, I'll leave the number on the screen for you guys, 270-467-2426. And if you're wondering why I look like this when I share this with you, it's because I'm just happy to hear that you guys have called. I'm just happy when I see these messages of how folks are saving thousands of dollars and it's going back into their Social Security, and it's helping so many people get through these trying and times of high prices and inflation and increased cost of living, where it's a struggle day in and day out. So why not take advantage of an opportunity that can really help you, right? And Chapter is who I recommend my mom call, and Michelle's mom, my mother-in-law. They're waiting for you. Dial the number, 270-467-2426. I'll leave it up on the screen, down in the description, and in the pinned comment. Give Chapter a call. I'm sure you'll be glad that you did.
Major scoop from Laura Loomer. Ladies and gentlemen, this is massive. Laura Loomer's scoops have been pretty darn good. She has direct access to the White House. She knows what's up. She's been proven right time and time again. And she's saying, ladies and gentlemen, Dan Bongino might quit the FBI. Now, I don't know anything. I'm just some guy sitting here and I saw this tweet. I got some phone calls to make, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, let's go. The simple version. The Epstein story has been botched to such a degree that Dan Bongino is upset over what Pam Bondi has done. And Cash is also upset. They were not consulted on these moves, and now they are pissed. Dan Bongino reported taking the day off, might not even come back to the job. Listen, I have told you this. When Dan Bongino took that job, I said there are very few people that I actually look up to. And that means a lot for me to say because I'm arrogant. Most of my life, I've seen people and said, I can do it better. And then I saw Dan Bongino. He's sharp, he's talented, he's strong, he's a leader, and he gave it all up. A multi-million-dollar enterprise, something I could never, I don't have the strength to do it, so he could be a public servant. And I said, man, that epitomizes what we should strive to be. Very few living people I would say that about, that I look up to them and what they did. Because again, I'm like this headstrong guy who's like, I know what I'm doing. I'm right. I know what's going on. And then, so I see the greatest skateboarders or puck boys or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I can do it. And then I look at Dan. I'm like, man, I could never do that. So when all this Epstein stuff happened, of course, I'm like, man, I don't know. Dan Bongino and Cash are as good as it gets. What is going on? Now, he made the argument yesterday. I was talking to Ian on the uncensored portion of the show, and I said, when I was told that Dan Bongino was compromised, I thought to myself, what earthly thing, and I mean that literally, is going to scare Dan Bongino? Maybe, they threatened his family? But I was like, Mike Cernovich was like, no, please, you think the threat, come on, he knows what that is. And so I'm imagining, like, if Dan Bongino genuinely believes there's nothing here, there's no story, there's no client list, it's all, if he genuinely believes it, as it's in the evidence, then maybe he's just telling the truth. But if he really believes there is something there and he's lying, what would convince him to lie? And I'm like, so I don't believe he's compromised. And that's why I said earthly. I'm like, dude, if Dan Bongino walked in a room and a guy in a suit said, you're going to do as we tell you or else, Dan's not the guy who's going to be like, oh, no, you've got me. Oh, I'm so sorry. For a 6-figure job, he's going to be like, buddy, I can leave this room right now and go back to my career and I can make 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars. I don't need this. He's going to tell him what for. And then I'm like, if it's some strange, family or power structure he's never seen before, like if a guy walked up and was like, and threatened him, he's like, bro, I don't even know you.
The entire internet is going insane right now with some of these most recent posts and updates breaking. Kash Patel considers resigning as FBI director along with Dan Bongino if Pam Bondi stays and Bongino leaves. Holy smokes, Kash and Dan out? No, Pam Bondi, please read the writing on the walls, what Eric Doherty says. And this actually comes after Megyn Kelly says that Pam Bondi's she wants too much attention. And that's part of the problem here.
Mr. Bongino is thinking about his future with the FBI. We're told that both FBI Director Kash Patel and the Attorney General have every intention to stay and continue to serve.
So we're getting conflicting reports here. Fox News says breaking FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino is thinking about resigning over frustrations with the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files, including a clash with Attorney General Pam Bondi. So it's like, and both of these are from Fox News, just moments apart. So maybe Laura Loomer has the full scoop and says FBI Director Kash and Deputy Director Dan Bongino are livid with Attorney General Pam Bondi over her DOJ memo and the lack of transparency from her office regarding the Jeffrey Epstein files. Source tells me Dan Bongino is taking the day off today from his job as Deputy Director of the FBI, and there's now speculation on whether or not he will return to his job at the FBI over his disgust with Blondy's lack of transparency and handling of the Epstein files. Pam Bondi has brought total embarrassment to President Trump, J.D. Vance, Dan Bongino, and Kash Patel. She's also lied to the American people. And I'm told Kash and Bongino are furious with Blondie and the blowback she has caused them with her lack of transparency. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino should call for Blondie's public resignation today to save themselves and to also push for full transparency into the Epstein files. This is an issue the American people care deeply about, and someone needs to be fired for this. Giving Blondie courtesy to resign is more than she deserves. Trump should just fire her. Now, is this a catfight between Laura Loomer and Pam Bondi because, women just don't get along? Or is she justified in this? And perhaps maybe looking back on confirmation hearings and exchanges between Pam Bondi and Adam Schiff, allude to maybe Bondi's actually secretly working with Adam Schiff to undermine the Trump administration in a double play here, a double cross. Nick Sorter says, breaking now, Kash Patel is considering resigning if Pam Bondi, I keep wanting to say Blondie, stays and Dan Bongino goes, per Daily Wire. And this should be the end of the conversation. Bondi must be fired. And this is coming from the Daily Wire. We heard some stories from Fox News that conflict. And I'm actually hearing more from Axios, which normally we wouldn't put any consideration, any bearing into what Axios has to say. But considering it being shared by RJ Talks, well, I'll let you guys decide.
It did. I got a comment on what's happening in Washington with Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi. A direct plea to President Trump. Please, President Trump, I know you're not involved at this level. I know that you are busy working on huge, huge projects, but America can't lose Dan Bongino. He has so much credibility. Everybody knows him, loves him. Pam Bondi has created so much doubt and chaos in this whole thing. There's no reason for all of this. Either it's a massive cover-up or she's just fouled this up every single time. Please, let's not lose Dan Bongino. If there's a choice, I hope not, but please, fire Pam Bondi. Keep Dan Bongino, please.
It is Friday, July 11th, and the thermonuclear fallout continuing over Epstein. Dan Bongino getting ready to resign his post in protest over the closure of this case. That's what we're being told. There is so much happening here behind the scenes, and we know that because we're being told that, and because nobody is speaking publicly. Nobody from the administration, not even Trump. Everyone's gone silent, completely silent about this. The whole thing stinks, and there's something very, very wrong with all of this. Also, former Representative George Santos exposing a creepy story about what really happens on Capitol Hill, he says. We're going to show you that. It involves adult activity in cages inside government buildings, apparently, and more stories from around the country, including a 180 on Ukraine. Trump approving direct weapon shipments for the first time to Ukraine from Pentagon reserves. What is happening here? So it's day 4, the 4th day since Maine Justice announced the closure of the Epstein case, announcing that's it. Nothing more will be released about Epstein. Case officially closed. Stop asking about Epstein. That was 4 days ago. And since then, it has erupted, a thermonuclear eruption that just keeps getting worse. We've covered it every day, not because we want to, we don't want to, but because we have to. This is vitally important. And this is what separates our side from the other side. When they screw up over there, they fall in line, folks, and they run cover. That's not happening. We can't do that. We have to call it like we see it. If they get away with this, thinking we, the American people, don't have a right to know what really happened here, when we elected them to tell us what happened, and it's now coming to a boiling point. Deputy Director Dan Bongino in talks to resign from his post over the handling of this. That's what we're hearing. Separately as well from the Axios scoop. First, Laura Loomer reported this, then Axios, claiming Dan is furious over Bondi's handling, her botching of this case. Isn't it interesting, though, how Axios keeps getting these scoops? That's the outlet that published the 2-page memo from DOJ about the closure of the Epstein case originally, and multiple other leaks about Epstein, this Trump-hating outlet. Now they learn about what they're calling a major clash between Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam. Writing in the piece, 2 sources familiar with Bongino's position say he was increasingly displeased with Bondi's handling of the Epstein case because she had publicly overpromised and underdelivered disclosures about an Epstein client list that apparently never existed. Pam said her piece, Dan said his piece. It did not end on friendly terms, according to one person familiar with the story. The administration saying Dan is still on the job, though, but that's not what we're hearing. We're hearing he is resigning. He didn't show up to work this morning. In the coming days, there's a good chance he'll be out. If he gets out now, he may be able to claim he's fighting the good fight still, and who knows, go back to podcasting. But not so fast. It was Dan who found the video with the missing minute. He was the one who vouched for it, telling Cash he did a thorough review of that whole 10-hour video and promising it would end the matter altogether. In fact, he told us this on Fox News and convinced Cash to run with this story. Watch.
There is nothing in the file at this point on the Epstein case, and there's going to be a disclosure on this coming shortly. We are working through there is video. That is something the public does not.
There's video of him killing himself.
No, not the actual act, but the entire MCC Bay. It was only one camera. There's video that when you look at the video, and we will release. That's what's taken a while on this. We are working on cleaning it up to make sure you have an enhanced, and we're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans. You're going to see there's no one there but him. Right. There's just nobody there. So I say to people all the time, if you have a tip, let us know.
Well, everybody says that Matt Gaetz should have been Attorney General and not Pam Bondi. But regardless, if anybody in the Trump administration has to resign and or be fired, it is going to be a lasting black eye for MAGA, period. And, you know, if it's a cover-up, then you would think that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel are in on it, not allowing Dan Bongino's life and marriage to fall apart as a result of this cover-up that he's not even in on or privy to this information. And if it is an elaborate scheme and cover-up, even more goes deeper than the clash of Trump and Elon. This is some crazy 6D chess here, folks. My mind can't comprehend. Pam Bondi just shut down the Pfizer bribery case like it never existed. Bongino walks off the job. The clock's ticking and everyone sees it. Her time's almost up. Breaking, Dan Bongino took a day off Friday after clashing at the White House with Pam Bondi. Axios reports regarding the Epstein files. Insiders believe he quit, but officials say he's still deputy director of the FBI. Not surprising if true. This is awful, folks. This is absolutely terrible. And here's Megyn Kelly with what I was telling you about earlier.
I think she was thirsty for attention. I think she was enjoying the hits on Fox, on Hannity, on Waters, in the middle of the day with John Roberts and saying like, I've got all the answers on Epstein. I've got all the juicy dish and I'll be the one to give it to you, until she either found out that wasn't true and realized this is why attorneys general don't talk like this ever about their ongoing investigations ever. You almost never hear from attorney general. It's the one person in any administration, Republican or Democrat, who you really can't get. There's only so much transparency you're supposed to get from an attorney general, given the way criminal investigations work. And then realize like she had an oh shit moment of she's humiliated herself and the administration. Or again, I don't know, something else. Or it was real in the first place and now she's doing the lying. This, I don't know the truth on.
I'm not gonna lie, guys. This is making Trump supporters look like fools as we're running around like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to make sense of this, report on it, and maintain some level of calmness and sanity amongst you guys, right? Colin Rugg says, just in, FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino took the day off after clashing with Attorney General Pam Bondi at the White House over the Epstein files, according to Axios. And the alleged fight erupted after a 10-hour video was released with a minute missing, and some insiders believed Bongino quit. However, administration officials say he's still on the job. And two sources familiar with Bongino's position say he was increasingly displeased with Bondi's handling of the Epstein case because she had publicly overpromised and underdelivered disclosures about an Epstein client list that apparently never existed. And Pam Bondi said her piece, Dan said his piece. It didn't end on friendly terms, said one person, according to the outlet outlet being Axios. Now, this actually kind of sounds like the story we heard about Elon Musk and Scott Bessent getting into a tussle, into a fight in the hallway, and it just not ending well. However, if this is in fact true, I don't think it's a matter of over-promising and under-delivering. I think it's a matter of Dan Bongino knows, Kash Patel knows, Pam Bondi knows, but Pam Bondi's not letting it. She's not letting the cat out of the bag, and these guys are freaking pissed. Okay. And somehow, some way, either then Pam Bondi's got President Trump by the balls, or this is being directed by President Trump for Pam Bondi to act in such a way, which neither one of those are great scenarios here, folks. They're just being 100% honest and transparent with you. Dan Bongino is considering quitting as deputy head of the FBI after having a massive fight with Pam Bondi over the Epstein files. He didn't show up to work today.
All right, this breaking news. Sources tell CNN that Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino has told people that he's considering resigning amid a major clash between the FBI and DOJ over the continued fallout from the release or lack thereof of the Jeffrey Epstein memo. Joining us right now in files, joining us right now on the phone is CNN anchor and chief White House correspondent Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, what more are you learning?
Yeah, Fred, it remains to be seen if he actually follows through with what he has told colleagues. But what we do know is that Dan Bongino has told people he is considering resigning as the deputy director of the FBI over the fallout that has continued ever since this memo was released last Sunday. The anger inside the MAGA base has only continued to grow instead of going away, as some officials inside hoped it would. And now our colleagues, along with Christian Holmes, Tanner Rabinowitz, and Evan Perez, we're hearing that he's considering resigning after they had this heated confrontation with the Attorney General Pam Bondi over the handling of this earlier this week. And basically there was a meeting at the White House where the FBI Director, Kash Patel, was there, the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles. They were questioned about whether they were part of a story that there was basically some infighting over how this came out and this memo that said we're not going to be releasing any more information related to Jeffrey Epstein. And I should note that we are told Bongino denied leaking any story to this outlet that it was reported on. But there has been a lot of fighting between Attorney General Pam Bondi specifically and the leadership over at the FBI over who's to blame in this situation. I think the context here is obviously Dan Bongino, Kash Patel. They came from this MAGA world where they themselves had pushed a lot of questions about the so-called client list that Epstein had beforehand. And now the MAGA base is just not pleased or satisfied with what they've said in this memo that came out unsigned from the Justice Department and the FBI on Sunday night. So what we are told is Dan Bongino did not show up to work today, that he is essentially not there out of protest. But whether or not he actually follows through on this still remains to be seen. We're still reporting that out. But it just speaks to the backlash that the White House is very much feeling and understanding after this memo came out, despite President Trump the other day in the cabinet room asking, who still cares about this? One thing we know is the MAGA base certainly does.
All right, Caitlin Collins, thanks so much for that. We'll check back with you as you learn more. CNN Senior Justice.
And then, all right, let's just say you want to save face. Let's just say you want to save face, or maybe Pam Bondi is the scapegoat here and she gets thrown under the bus. She gets fired. She resigns. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel stay on board, but there's still no additional information released about the Epstein file, which kind of squashes the whole thing. Pam Bondi gets the short end of the stick here, but it still doesn't look good for MAGA. It doesn't look good for the Trump administration. So the only real solution here is to call a spade a spade. Call it exactly what it is. Provide every single piece of information. Let the chips fall where they may. You'll potentially save face for making good on promises, but there's definitely damage done. And now we are essentially in damage control mode, folks. Believe it or not. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, says, wow, who would have thought that electing a rapist would have complicated the release of the Epstein files? Is she searching for a defamation lawsuit with this statement here? Wow, bold move there, AOC. You're writing checks that your ass or your mouth can't cash. even on that ridiculous government salary of yours. And Raw's Alert says, breaking, FBI Director Kash Patel is now considering resignation if Pam Bondi remains and Dan Bongino is removed. And this is a multiple play. This is a 5D chess move within the Trump administration and MAGA organization. And I got to tell you guys, the end result here isn't good no matter what, as far as I can tell, sitting here from my kitchen.